Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, May 21st, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I will be right back. Those two are going to talk. I have to call up our guest, and I will be right back.
Yeah, it's the incredible floating microphone here.
It was good for dramatic effect.
Yes, it was a reveal. What can I say?
Yeah, it was like a reveal.
Yeah, we're gonna have a guest in a few minutes. We'll leave it a surprise until Eck brings him on. And I don't know if you want to do one of those other actor comparatives, Russ, but we maybe save that for tomorrow because usually we talk about it beforehand. But I just following up on the one from yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I looked through the sort of the IMDb of both Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler, and honestly, if I had to pick one or the other, I would probably pick Ferrell.
Okay.
But really, I'm not overly enthused about either one of their lists. I mean, Elf is really good. Stranger Than Fiction is good. And then Sandler has a couple other good ones. But needless to say, if you're on a desert island and you want the complete collection of one or two actors, I'm not including Will Ferrell or Adam Sandler on the list.
No, I only did it because they're close. That's why I've been doing these, picking people that I think are close. But like I said, because of what Sandler has done directing, I give him a little bit of the edge. Maybe it's because he has to act a different way in those movies, and maybe he has to be more under control when he's directing. So whatever it is, I like it better. Now, do I count the Hanukkah song in his favor? Maybe.
Jeez. To me, that's sort of a mark against.
No, it isn't, because there really are no Hanukkah songs. There was a need for it. Yeah.
I always wondered why there isn't.
It's probably just not popular enough for anybody to even make one to think that they can make money selling it. So they just never bothered. Like, nobody ever bothered. So when he did it, at least it was well received in that regard, and people sort of wear it with like a badge of honor. So they like it. I think I get it. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I also I didn't show it off, and we're just killing time here until that comes back in. But I didn't show it off on the show on Tuesday when we had Anthony.
Oh, you mean your tattoo? You got your tattoo, right?
No, not a tattoo.
Oh, not that? Okay.
No, I'd never get a tattoo. No, I didn't get a chance to show off my Equalizer box set, and which I'm extremely proud of. And I've been watching the first season episodes, and it's amazing how many like popular and very well-known actors were on some of the early episodes. And it's funny because I didn't pick up on the connection between the movie Equalizer movie with Denzel Washington and the series.
Was it sponsored by Geritol? Do you know?
No, it was not sponsored by Geritol. It was not sponsored by Metamucil No, nothing like that. No, but did you see the Equalizer movies?
No, I have not seen the movies.
Okay, in the movies, the Academy Award winning actress Melissa Leo.
Hey guys, so we're back. Yep, we're back, and I've got on the line with us Scotty Niedermayer. How are you doing, Scotty?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much. How's the family? I know times are crazy. Everybody healthy?
Yeah. No, obviously everybody seems to be in relatively similar situations here where things have changed. But my family is doing well. Our three of our boys are with us up here in British Columbia, and our oldest is still down in California. He was in school down there and decided to stay down there at least for now. So everybody's good. Thanks.
Oh, great. Good to hear. Really good to hear. Mike, you're going to start off with a question here, Mike.
Okay. Scott, I was at the draft in Buffalo in 1991 when you were selected third overall. Ironically, I cover the Maple Leafs, and that pick was the Maple Leafs draft pick from the Tom Curvers deal. You had a lot of connections to the Leafs, that being one of them. A couple really interesting series in the early 2000s when you faced them in the second round. What was it like to face those Leaf teams, and what was the toughest team that you played against in a playoff scenario throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's, anytime I went to Toronto, there was always somebody that would sort of bring that connection up. I mean, to me, it didn't really feel that it was anything that important because I had never been in Toronto. I know it was their pick that I was drafted with, but, I was sort of always with the Devils. So that didn't really seem to be as big a deal for me as it was for maybe Leaf fans that realized they had traded that pick away. And yeah, we had some tough battles with, the Leafs in that era. There were some pretty good teams, and we really, our big rivalries were we had a lot of tough matchups with Philadelphia. I would probably say that we had some series against them that were pretty tough, and then early in my career, the Rangers as well. And those were our big rivalries, probably more so than Toronto, but. Hockey was tough back then, and you had to earn your way through a playoff series.
I lived through several of those in Philly. At the time, I was a kid with my parents in the stands while you guys were taking us out in those depressing Claude Lemieux era games. That was a lot of
yeah, it was tough in that.
They were rough times. Go ahead, Russ.
So, Scott, getting back to the 91 draft, because this is something I never would have asked you during your playing days. You went third overall. Lindros goes first. We know what happened there. Pat Falloon went second. I was curious what other teams may have contacted you, and were you surprised that the Sharks didn't take you? Do you think they were interested? Did they tell you they were? I'm just curious.
Yeah. The whole lead up to the draft was so much different back then than it is now.
Yeah.
There was really no combine. There was no sort of organization of anything. Teams did their own thing. So actually, I had a trip to San Jose. I was down there with, I don't know, I can't even remember, but maybe 3-4 other players, do some interviews. They obviously were kind of watching us, I'm sure, the whole time. What are these guys like? I think we went to a Giants baseball game. They probably did a bit of physical testing, different things like that. Did the same thing to New Jersey. Went to New Jersey, actually went to Winnipeg. And then the Islanders had the 4th pick overall. I never did go to the Island, but they did have a more extensive interview at the draft in Buffalo, maybe the day before, and that was the extent of contact I had with any teams prior to the draft. Quebec didn't interview me. I think they knew what they were doing, so left to sort of the teams after that. And I wasn't surprised that they took Falloon. I had hurt my knee the end of my draft year, so I never played. The last couple of months, I never played in the playoffs, and Falloon was with Spokane. He went on to win the Memorial Cup that year, and he had a phenomenal year. Scored a ton of points and goals, and then obviously the team success. So I wasn't surprised. I kind of had a feeling I would end up in New Jersey. I don't know why. No one came out and said that, but I had that feeling that was probably where I'd end up.
Yeah, I mean, it's really they were great teams, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about Lou Lamoriello because one more. He's always been one of the most interesting people from our perspective to cover, obviously, because he doesn't tell the media anything. But he's a fun guy, and I know he's a sweet guy. Like I know he's a much sweeter guy than he lets up. We always say he's like the mafia boss of the NHL. But what was it like working with him? What are your thoughts on Lou?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I got there, I was pretty young, naive in a lot of ways. About business, about life. And I think really the one thing about Lou is he's 100% committed to trying to have, the team have success. That's all he's about. He'll do whatever it takes. Everyone else he feels should sort of have that same mindset. And I think it did trickle down into the rest of the organization, and we sort of recognize that that's what the Devils are about. And if you are part of that team, or you want to be part of that team, you have to take that same approach and recognize that it's about the team first. And a lot of the little things we did, little rules we had, and how the Devils, how we did our business was all about that. And at the same time, obviously, did that with pretty firm rules and firm
Yeah.
restrictions into how he operated his team. But at the
For
same
sure.
time, you're right. He's a very loyal person. He's done a lot of great things for people very quietly that no one really knows about, or just kind of you hear about through the grapevine that
Yeah.
he's helped people that needed help. And, so yeah, he's all business when he's around the rink, but, there's more sides to him for sure.
One of my funniest memories, I was sitting next to Russ in the Philadelphia press box the year after when you had gone to Anaheim, and we were in a preseason game. Russ, I'll never forget this. We're sitting there, and out skates somebody, some rookie with number 27 on their backs, and we're like, "That's Lou."
No, that's it, right? Like that's a message that no one is bigger than the team, and the team's more important than anything, and that's a great little example. Of sort of his mindset. I think, what I've learned about him, being with him for a long time, and still actually probably better friends with a better relationship now.
Sure.
That I'm not there or not playing anymore. We stay in contact. I talk to him occasionally. So.
That's great. He's a great guy. I wanted to do something really quickly before we let you go. That's we do with other players we've had on and some Hall of Famers. We've been lucky in the quarantine. No one can say no to you because they're all kind of stuck at home.
yeah, we got time. Yeah, we can't say we're busy.
Exactly. No one can blow you off in this one. So we call it "What kind of hockey player?" A little bit. These are quick questions. It's what kind of hockey player are you or were you? And they're really simple and they're fun little questions. So I'm going to go through them quickly with you here. So. The city you grew up in?
Cranbrook, British Columbia.
Cranbrook, British Columbia. You still visit there?
No, we're back. We moved to Penticton a couple of years ago. A couple of my boys are playing some junior hockey here.
Gotcha. Before you, an NHL player who grew up closest to where you grew up?
Steve Yzerman was born in Cranbrook. I don't think he lived there very long, till he was maybe 6 or 7, 8 years old, and then moved, I think, to Ontario. But he was a pretty big star, and we loved looking at the back of his hockey card, and it said born Cranbrook, BC. That was a thrill.
That's great.
Growing up in Cranbrook.
That's got to be awesome. Favorite NHL team as a kid?
Yeah, I kind of took it upon myself to cheer against the Oilers because everybody out west, big Oilers fan. They were on their run through the '80s, and such a great team. I mean, it wasn't fun cheering against them because I usually lost. But so whether it was Calgary or the Islanders early in the '80s, those are teams I'd cheer for. And then I remember as I got a bit older and Lemieux was drafted, I think Pittsburgh became my favorite team.
Yeah, that's that's funny. So not Vancouver, huh?
No, Vancouver wasn't very good at that point.
Right.
Actually, Cranbrook is much closer to Calgary and Alberta. That's kind of where we went as kids to play hockey, and that was we were more aware of what was going on there than out on the coast.
I got you. Favorite hockey writer when you were growing up that you would read in the hockey news, say?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I, even probably paid attention to who was writing what.
Gotcha.
News was a big deal as a kid. There wasn't anything online. That was it. That was sort of the news you got. And yeah, my parents had a subscription, and there was always something in there that you found interesting, and were excited when it came to the house.
Isn't it funny? We all looked forward to it. I know. Best hockey.
Now it's everywhere.
Now it's instant. Then the hockey news was really about things that happened 5 or 6 days ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Much different world for sure.
Isn't it crazy? We always have every player come on and chime in on this one because they hate it. But best hockey player of all time.
So I mean Gretzky.
Yeah.
I was a little too. I didn't see Bobby Orr playing in his prime or see him live. As I was growing up, and really Gretzky was the one that I got to watch.
Right.
And I think that always is going to hold a certain special place in your memory, I think. But I would say it's hard to argue with that.
It's a tormented childhood rooting against Edmonton and having Wayne Gretzky as your best player of all time.
Yeah, well, I think I was well aware that he was really good. But,
yeah, for sure.
It was kind of boring if there was a bunch of us sitting there watching Oilers play somebody in the playoffs and we're all cheering for him.
I totally get it. I was the same way in Philadelphia, rooting against the Eagles here. So yeah, I get it.
Okay.
Player you idolized as a kid.
Probably would have been Paul Coffey. As a defenseman that was always involved in the offense. And I did cheer against the Oilers, but they were fun to watch.
Yeah.
It looked like they were having a lot of fun out there, and Coffey was a big part of that, playing with those great offensive players, and his skill complemented them so well. And then, like I said, I was a big Lemieux fan when he got drafted. A bit older, but then he probably became my favorite player at that point.
What was the most famous? I mean, you've met everybody in hockey, but the most nervous or famous person you ever kind of met, you're like, that I'm actually nervous. This is such a legend type player.
Yeah, I think it changes as I've gotten older, and the more you meet, it gets a little easier. But I would just remember my first game, not even meeting players, but just playing against. Mark Messier, I think I was starting lineup in my first regular season game. And
wow.
All of a sudden, the guy I was cheering against, and, it's hard to explain. I mean, it doesn't seem real that I could be out there taking in my skates, looking at this guy. And then, to be honest, what was really cool, there was quite a few guys I hadn't met when the NHL did that 100 players.
Oh, yeah.
In Los Angeles at the All-Star game. And there was a moment there where they had this sort of curtained off area in just sort of this underground place before we went out on the stage. And I didn't really know, where I was going. They were walking me into it, and they opened up the curtains, and all of a sudden I looked, and it's just like every single face was like, there's Bobby Orr, there's Gretzky, there's Grant Spear. I mean, it just was like,
that's great. I
don't know. It was a shocking moment just to like stumble into that and look around and kind of think, geez, am I lost? Or that was a pretty neat moment.
Oh man, two more for you. This is great. Thanks so much. Your earliest hockey memory as a kid.
This might be cheating because I kind of, it's a picture that my parents had, up in the house for a long time, so it's kind of seared in my brain. But and the story as well is a bit more of a story than I remember it firsthand. But I think it was me getting dressed for my first practice.
Nice.
First time to get all the equipment and the whole thing, a jersey, and you're so excited. And I'm out in front of our house, all dressed up, ready to go, and my brother and some of our other friends are all standing around kind of like looking at me like, look at this guy, he's going to go play hockey. Like it seemed like a pretty big moment. I think my brother followed probably like 2 months later. Probably parents signed him up and got him, skating too. But, growing up in Canada in a small town, hockey was a big deal. And, you were excited to get a chance to get on the ice and play. And that sort of summed up that excitement and, passion for the game that small town in Canada and British Columbia has for the game.
So amazing. Your favorite game you ever played in?
Ooh.
I know it's really tough, not fair, but
yeah, I haven't been asked that one before. Been asked my favorite this, that, and the other, but I've never been asked my favorite game.
How about the gold medal game against the U.S.?
Yeah, that popped into my head. Of course. I mean, that was the energy, the passion, the feeling. The pressure, just everything that surrounded that game was huge and a thrill to be a part of. Some pretty exciting games, obviously, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, clinching the Stanley Cup. The first game I played, I don't know. I can't pick.
I can
pick one. It's a good question.
Most people don't really. I mean, a lot of people. Everybody thinks Crosby the golden goal, but people forget. I don't think people realize you were the captain of that team, correct?
I was the old guy that had been around. And, I think, put it on the old guy. He's been through some things before, and we were fortunate. We had a lot of young, talented players in 2010 that were really carrying the load in a lot of ways. But, the veteran guys have a little experience, and hopefully that did help at some point.
That was something. That was my most fun game to ever cover. I was at that game. That was amazing. That was something. That whole city, just taking the bus and hearing people sing "Oh Canada, Oh Canada" on the bus as you drove in and everything.
I think I was mad when I shut off the TV, but that's okay.
I mean, it was way bigger than just the one game. The whole 2.5 weeks, Canada had done quite well. They were having success. All the athletes were performing well. The women's team won.
Yeah.
The last day of it, in Canada, people all over the city, all over the country. Yeah. I mean, it was a bigger deal than just hockey. It was a bigger deal than just one game. So, that was special for sure.
It was.
Yeah, I interviewed Ryan Kessler before that game, and he was extremely pumped up, wanted to talk about it. I was surprised actually how much he did want to talk about it. So I knew that all you guys were so excited to play in that game.
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of swept up with all of that. I mean, we were sitting in the athletes' village right across from the rink, and you could hear different events going on. You could see the fans walking around, chanting, singing. We were with the other athletes that were performing well. The different skiers and figure skaters, and all of them. And so we were fans as well as athletes, and we enjoyed the whole experience for sure. And we were excited. We were nervous. I mean, we knew things had gone so well up to that point, and don't screw this one up, guys. We got to do our job now. So.
I know how tight you were with Marty Brodeur, obviously, and I remember one of my favorite points in that in the leading up to there when Marty played a game in one of the preliminaries, I think it was, and the puck comes behind the net, and the two defensemen, normally a defenseman would go back and get the puck from his goalie, and you just waited on the boards because you knew that's where he was going to go. The other defenseman went behind the net. There was like a little bit of a mix-up, and I'm thinking to myself, you got to remember that you don't go behind the net to get the puck. Marty gets you the puck.
I mean that's a really just good little example of how a whole team works, really, right? Like that. Yeah. In an event like that where you haven't played with players. Yep. So many of those little things that seem like not a big deal that could have turned into a goal against or the difference in a game. And that's why it's hard. That's why those type of tournaments are a little bit of roll of dice. And, we managed to figure out. But I knew what Marty. I was very fortunate to play in front of Marty for most of my career, ultimately, and he made me look a heck of a lot better than I was. For sure.
I'd seen it plenty of times, so I was like, I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I'm like, there it is. Finally, what are your thoughts on what's going on now? I mean, the NHL coming back. Do you you think they should come back? Do you think it's safe? What are your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, I mean, those are tough questions.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think I think there's lots of answers to it. I would guess that most players want to get back and at least get a crack at the playoffs, get a crack at winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, that's it is big business. There's money. All of that's important too. But I really do believe that the majority of players, their priority is to go out and try and win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. And I think they want that chance, especially if you're on a team that you feel has that opportunity. Correct. You're right. You're one of the top teams, and I know if I hadn't won or if I had that opportunity on a team that thought we could win a Stanley Cup, I'd probably do almost anything I could to get that crack at trying to win it. So
that makes sense.
To me, I feel that's an important piece of the puzzle. Speaking selfishly as somebody, there's not a lot going on. I would love to be able to watch playoff hockey at any point, whether it's in the summer or whenever it is. I would enjoy it.
We all feel that way.
And then there is the risk of, what is the risk to players and people involved just trying to put the games on. And, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. There's risk to all of us these days, and I'm sure players are willing to take some risk. I mean, there always is risk in life.
Sure.
You've got to figure all that out. So I don't have an answer to that.
I think the energy will be fun. I think because everybody obviously being so stir crazy, the first couple games, people are going to be ready to go. I think. Yeah. I think everyone's been locked up.
Crazy hockey, I'm sure.
It will be crazy hockey. Well, Scotty, thank you so much. And I also want to mention because my son mentioned this, he was reading through your stuff that you've done some stuff with Wildlife Foundation up there in Canada, correct?
Yeah. So I guess all hockey players have a little bit of a backstory to something that they have other interests or whatever. And growing up in a small town, we were out fishing and hiking and skiing, and that was a big part of our life. And as I traveled around with hockey and started living in bigger cities, I appreciated that opportunity more and more back in Cranbrook. Get home in the summer and be able to head out into the mountains or on a river or whatever, and just really started to appreciate it. And I've always enjoyed those things. Yeah. So then when I retired, I have done a little bit of work. So for a while, I was involved with the World Wildlife Fund, which is a really big worldwide, conservation organization. So I was just doing some PR work for them on the West Coast of Canada. And actually, in the last year, I've become involved with a group called Y to Y, Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Group that
That's
is
wonderful.
working to sort of protect and help keep that area from Yellowstone in the U.S. all the way up to the Yukon in northern Canada as healthy as possible for wildlife and for opportunity for people to get out and witness that wildlife, whether it's grizzly bears and wolves and things like that. So it's interesting, very different than hockey, and met a lot of different people, and just trying to lend a little helping hand from my sort of, I guess, fame from hockey. If I can.
That's great.
And, just another thing to do. And
Fantastic.
there's a lot more to life than hockey. Hockey's great. Hockey's been wonderful to me, but it's a big planet and lots of different things going on.
That's fantastic. I was just my son is reason he brought that up. He's going into school for zoology, and we've been placing trail cams up in the Poconos here to try to track brown bears, and he's been doing reports on like where the brown bears are. We were up there this week picking up 3 trail cams, dropping off 3 more, and checking out all these great photos of the brown bears up there. It's I've grown just a huge passion for it. So when I heard that, I think that I just love that. And Russ and his wife do a bunch of stuff with animals as well. So that's awesome.
Nice.
Thank you so much again.
Yeah, that's great.
Pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you guys too. You guys take care.
You too.
Thank you, Scott.
That's Scotty Niedermayer there joining us. That was great. What a great guy.
Yeah, he's always been a terrific guy. I mean, he really I had interviewed him probably a lot, 4, 5, 6, 7 times over the years, and just very humble guy.
Well, I have to say this about sorry.
Well, Eck froze.
My thing's whacking out. Sorry.
Okay.
I have to say this about defensemen like Niedermayer. If you look when he started in the NHL, it was predominantly big, bruising Scott Stevens type of defenseman, and the type of defenseman like he and Brian Leach and a few others were. Those are the ones that other teams emulate, and that's the style of defenseman that is prevalent now in the game. And and those bigger, slower, more physical defensemen are not, they're unless you're talking about somebody who actually can skate as well as be that, like a Seth Jones, they can't survive in the league anymore. So his type of defenseman is the sort of the prototype of where blue liners are going now.
Yeah, I forgot he had that knee injury late in his junior career, heading into the draft. See, it made him drop all the way to 3.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it made the Sharks probably overthink their situation. I knew Falloon was great in juniors, and he was a good NHLer. He could skate. He was a good skater. But yeah, that's one where they had him. They had him in San Jose. They did all the testing. They took him, like you said, to a Giants game. They had him there, and they went Falloon over him. That to me, that's interesting.
Well, like I said, I was at that draft. It was at the Odd.
Yeah.
And I was witness to Lindros not putting on the Nordiques jersey.
Yeah.
And back then I wasn't, there wasn't much in terms of scouting information other than the Hockey News, the couple weeks before the draft, who the highest rated guys were, and I had known, obviously the Leafs pick was the 3rd overall pick. It went to New Jersey in the Curvers deal. And you just knew based on the luck of the Leafs that the guy who ended up being taken with that pick was going to be a Hall of Famer, and he ended up being a Hall of Famer. They tried to avoid Lindros and the embarrassment of giving up the Lindros pick.
Yeah.
And in the end, they gave up Niedermayer, who probably
which is still horrible.
It actually is more horrible. But I have to say, he tried to answer the question, but that dynamic when it came to him being the pick that the Leafs lost in a famously bad deal. I mean, whenever the Devils played the Leafs, and they played them 2 years in a row, remember that famous series where the Leafs had 8 shots in the elimination game, and then the next year was the year and I didn't bring up Domi running into him and knocking him out, but that was. I mean, the Leafs had a legitimate chance to beat the Devils, and that was sort of the turning point of this series. Even though Domi got suspended for the rest of it, and Niedermayer was out, I think, for 1 game, and then ended up coming back, and the Leafs took the lead in the series, but ended up losing it in 7. I mean, it still was a turnaround. And then I believe they ended up winning the cup that year. So, Great defenseman. X going to restart his computer because he's having some issues there. Okay, let's start with the talk, and Eck will jump in. Russ, you had mentioned the report from, I think it was Adrian Wojnarowski last night, that the NBA is coming out with their plan, apparently in full, on June the 1st. Gee, what a shock.
Yeah, it's, after yesterday, and we sort of voiced how we thought things were going, I'm not shocked that all of a sudden, I heard last night the NHL is close. Somebody had told me that, texted me that, a source. And then today you wake up and the NBA's plan is revealed. That's part and parcel. The interesting part about the NBA reveal, though, is the fact that while there will only be a few hubs, which again, now it seems like the NHL is back to 2 hubs again, which is fine. I think that's best. These NBA players are not going to be in a bubble like we thought. They will be sequestered in a hotel, but they'll be allowed to go in and out freely. And I don't know, man, you're asking for trouble, I think, with that.
Well, Jan, yesterday we heard that one of the potential hubs was Vegas. And, I believe it was the Orleans Hotel that has a practice facility there, and they could play at the Vegas arena. And but the thing is, by the time we get to that, when the window to play the playoffs occurs, Vegas could be open again. So the problem could be the fact that there's gonna be a whole bunch of people there. But
it is off the strip, Mike. That's the big thing. Like with
it is, but still, I mean, it's not going to be like it's a ghost city. It's going to be, there's going to be people going there. Now, I don't know how anxious people are going to be to go to Vegas and be in casino type situations, but that is one factor. Now, Darren Drager just tweeted about 10, 15 minutes ago, Edmonton is rolling out a very impressive lifestyle presentation in its hub city quest, a secured golf course, cool temperatures, outdoor big screens for movies and other games, some fun stuff planned. So basically, they're trying to do this sort of bubble type of thing and give them some amenities.
So this is the only time Edmonton's been a positive place to live with cool temperatures. I think that's the funny part about this presentation. None of us would want cool temperatures in the spring and summer, but now Edmonton is turning that into a
I think it's cooler temperatures, not cool temperatures, right? So I'm picturing Pauly Shore and Biodome for some reason, but that's just me. But I mean, Edmonton, look, we talked a couple weeks ago, right? Ryan Rishaga has been reporting for a while that Edmonton has been working on this big presentation to try to be one of the hub cities. And look, if they can be, and if they're going to facilitate getting players there by creating some of these amenities in order to maintain people being safe, more power to them. I mean, again, I think clearly the reservation has been that players don't want to be quarantined and don't want to be restricted completely in their movement, right? So what I guess these cities are looking to do is try to find a happy medium or striking a balance where you're protecting the remainder of those cities. You're protecting the athletes, so you prevent them hopefully from getting sick if it is. You quarantine those individuals, but you also give them the options to do other activities as opposed to just sitting in the hotel the entire time. And that's really been the consternation, which is why, Orlando, with being mentioned as the main hub for the NBA, you sort of have to wonder how that's going to work. And is Disney World going to be an option for them now to start going to for players, given how many visitors Disney could end up having as well and creating issues that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least they'd be able to ride the Pirates of the Caribbean or some of these,
monorail to go from place to place.
Yeah, look, if they have to walk by the It's a Small World ride, they're going to get brainwashed with that. That is the most annoying ride on earth. And just being there and having to hear that every minute of every day, it does drive you crazy. So I don't know if that's a good solution, but I would hope, though, that guys would be sequestered a little better than, and again, I know you can't keep them in rooms 24/7. And that's why I was saying like the Orleans is a good idea because, they have other things there. They have spas, they have, there's a lot to do inside, and then they could order a lot of things to get to them in that place. But if you put them in a city and all of a sudden they could just go out and they go out to a restaurant, they do whatever they want, they can meet up with friends. I think you're going to have a lot of player replacements. I think you're going to have a lot of players testing positive. So And we'll see. Maybe the NBA will think twice about that. And the NHL hasn't announced anything. So the good news is we don't even know.
Well, I suppose it was according to LeBron said they're inching closer, right?
Yeah.
We should hear something in the next couple of days in terms of where they land. And we all know that the big sticking point is clearly the financial component of it. And that's been a problem since day one. That continues to be a problem, and how they align in terms of the escrow, in terms of this year as well as moving forward. And those are the areas that need to be resolved, more so in my opinion than probably anything else.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
Thankfully, my computer dies right after the interview.
That was good. Good timing on that.
Because it was a double.
Is escrow the biggest problem? I don't think so.
No.
I think it's a small problem because, again, I think the players are always going to bitch about escrow.
Well,
I think right now,
we're talking about the next
with the next thing. I was saying the NBA had laid out their plan, so now, of course, the field is open for the NHL now to follow the NBA once again. But what I was saying to Jan is I don't think escrow is number one here, because I think the bigger problem is who's actually making the playoffs and who isn't, because then those teams, you have to sort of make it up to them in the draft. Right. Otherwise, nobody will be happy with the way that's going to go down. And I think that's more important than even the escrow, because the escrow is a thing, but you know what? They don't get the playoffs figured out. Nothing happens anyhow.
You know what escrow is? You know what escrow is? It's a negotiating point. It's like it's something that they can give or take depending on how they need to. You know what I mean? It's one of those typical situations where, you know, they're going to want other things, and everybody knows that they're not happy with the escrow. So it's the kind of thing they could say, okay, we're fine with the escrow, but we need to go to the Olympics. Like, to me, that's like the Olympics are a bigger deal to them. I think I could see them saying something like that.
Well, I think that's pretty much
perspective. It's the sort of Damocles that hang over the player's head, right? The Olympics, the World Cup, all this stuff. It seems to be stuff as opposed to things where you're looking to negotiate to get to a point where both sides are in agreement. It's things, we'll give you A, but we're going to hold this thing over your head and make you look bad in the media, which is what they're trying to do now.
Yeah,
right.
So it's sort of like what Major League Baseball is doing, right? Releasing that email was clearly a ploy to make the players look as bad as possible. It's the same thing on the flip side of times we see with the NHL. It's we're going to basically leak information to try to make the players look as bad as possible, as opposed to finding a solution that works best for both sides without creating this animosity between them.
And pretty much the Olympics is a complete non-starter because you're talking about it being in coronavirus central.
Right now it is a non-starter, but the idea is that if it's in Calgary or say it's moved to Calgary, I've heard that, it could be moved to Montreal, whatever. There's places it can be moved to. Then it changes things, right? So to me, the Olympics are a much bigger factor to them. They understand the escrow is something they don't have. I mean, the escrow, players have some of the biggies. They have guaranteed contracts. That's like an enormous thing that they have.
The escrow would be taken care of if a new CBA is negotiated. But what seemed to be the biggest stumbling point was the fact that in a 24 team format that, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, a team like Montreal, if Carey Price gets hot, could walk through to a couple rounds when Montreal doesn't deserve to, because they're not that good of a team. And you would have to make these playoffs, these play-in rounds, a little more challenging than a best of three, because a hot goalie for 2 games allows a team to get into in the round of 16. And that's really not fair for a team that was in the playoffs for 68 to 70 games.
Right, but I think Brooks wrote yesterday, and Friedman especially did, about he's hearing that the play-ins would be best of 5,
right,
as opposed to best of 3, right? And
how they changed that? That didn't change that. That's interesting.
I mean, we talked a lot about, look, and you guys, I helped to self-pat, right? But I've been saying for how long, just go with top 12 in a conference, right? It just seems to make sense. And then the big sticking point, as you said, Mike, is who is eligible for the lottery. In my opinion, is you take the top 7 and make them eligible for the lottery, and then the other ones you make it in terms of whoever gets knocked out in the play-in can only move up X number of spots, and you've kind of resolved your issue where you have a shot at making the playoffs, but also end up with the first overall pick by restricting it in that manner. I mean, it seems to make too much sense, but as we've seen, because it makes sense, is likely not the way they're going to go.
And my argument is that if you gave Mark Bergevin or maybe even Stan Bowman the option of either being in a 24-team playoff or being in the lottery, they'd choose to be in the lottery because they have no realistic chance of winning the Stanley Cup. So,
especially with no home ice, right?
Right.
It'd be one thing if you're getting certain you're getting revenue in by having games in your own arena, You're not even
They
probably
make a
getting
lot of money on television in Canada. And
No, I agree with you, right? But that's shared
two
revenue
networks
anyway.
televise them. Remember this.
Right, but you're not selling your own. You're probably not selling your own advertising associated with. That's going to be the league that's going to be doing that.
Now,
I don't know. I mean, I think the locals. It's going to have to be. They're going to have to do something for the locals because of the fact that they are doing that. I mean, because of like we talked about before, they may have to give. I mean, we might see these. It might be the kind of situation where the local games are televised by the local networks. Like if you're not, of course, you'll be able to see it if you're on CBC or something like that. But you might not be able to see it on CBC. If you're in Montreal, you may have to watch it on the local broadcast. I could very easily. And RDS, who is covers the Canadians too. They're going to cover either way. So there's a lot of money involved with the Canadians.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just saying though.
I don't think the Canadians would ever. I think the chances of them getting Lafreniere are like what percentage? Like 4%, something like that, 5%.
Better than 0.
Yeah, but it's better to go. It's better to play some hockey and try to win. I mean, I don't buy for a second that they would rather.
I'm not saying they're going to be given the option, Ak. I'm saying if they did have
if
the
they were
option.
given the option, I don't buy for a second that they would take the 5% chance of Lafreniere over the playoffs.
Plus, also, Mike, as we saw, right, if they go with the route that we've seen, where you can only move up 3 or 4 spots, they wouldn't even have a shot at getting Lafreniere based upon where they're situated in the standings.
Right. I mean, every team. I mean, you've got Carey Price still. I mean, you're still paying Carey Price $1 gazillion a year. You go for it. You go. Russ, do you agree with that? I mean.
Yeah, no, actually.
I think they would rather take the 5%.
Bergevin has prepared for this draft with 13 picks. Even though Carey Price wouldn't be thrilled that he would be on ice for the playoffs, I think Carey Price realized probably 2 weeks before the season ended he was probably not going to make the playoffs. I've got to do what's best for the team. I would rather do better in the draft than go around in the playoffs and lose. I don't buy Larry Brooks's article at all about teams being afraid of Carey Price when they have that defense in front of them. I don't buy it at all.
Did you not? I mean, remember, didn't they just vote Carey Price the best goaltender in the NHL by far?
It doesn't matter. I mean, again, Carey Price has not even been a lockdown goalie in his career in the playoffs. We haven't even seen that ever. So why all of a sudden does he have this reputation? I'd be more worried about Tuukka Rask. Yeah. I would be more worried about Connor Hellebuck. There's 4 or 5 other goalies I'm more worried about than Carey Price because of their team in front of them too.
Yeah, and remember, Montreal traded Kovalchuk. They traded Nate Thompson. They traded a couple other players. Yeah. So they stripped down for the whole purpose of not tanking, but they knew they weren't going to make the playoffs. And now all of a sudden they're in the playoffs. And who's your second best forward on that team? Paul Byron. I mean, they're not a realistic team in terms of advancing the playoffs unless Carey Price stands on his head. And then even if he does, what does that say about the playoff format that a team that did not belong in the playoffs gets through to the next round because one player stood on his head?
We've seen it before. Did we see Jonathan Quick? Did we not see Jonathan Quick take the Kings to their first Stanley Cup? I mean, literally. Yeah, they made it on the last day of the season. They were an 8th seed, and they won.
That's not saying that the LA Kings weren't a good team.
They were not a good team that year.
Oh, I think they were a good team.
They were the 8th seed in their conference. They were up and down all over the place. I mean, they became, of course, a good team. But that year, I mean, that was frigging exciting. I mean, what the hell?
Look at this.
That's what we play sports for, for the underdogs.
Here's the reality. Now, the last time Price was in the playoffs, he did have a .933, but career-wise, he has a .914 save percentage, and he's 25-31. He doesn't have a playoff aura. He really doesn't.
I know he does.
Russ, I think
you're dead right about that, Russ. I just still don't see the Montreal Canadiens saying they don't want to be in the playoffs and instead they'd rather have a 5% chance.
They won't say it publicly, but
or even feel it. Like I cannot see. I mean, that's just not what legendary teams. That's not the way legendary teams think. I mean, listen, it doesn't. You said they had 13 picks. They still have 13 picks, right? We're just talking about the first pick over. We're talking about their chance of getting that first pick.
Okay, well, they need that first pick more than they need a first-round playoff exit. That's my point.
But Ross, if they stagger the draft whereby you can only move up 3 or 4 spots, right? They're not getting Lafreniere anyway, based upon where they're situated in the standings.
They need to go as high as they can go, Jan. They do, because if
but again, you're using 7 and 10.
No, I am going to use that because it matters. They're going to be in the top 10. If they could get in the top 6 or 7, they need to be there.
Right, but if you
got to be 6, oh my gosh!
But you could still stagger it, right? But Russ, you can still stagger again. And first of all, Brooks is using Price as an example. He didn't use Rask and other guys because those teams are realistic to make a long run. Montreal is not. It's just used as an example. But my point I'm making is if you take it where you can only move up X spots, you have the top 7. You can only move up X. If you then take the teams that get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs and move them up, then they have the opportunity to still move up potentially somewhere into the top 10 based upon how you stagger the draft.
Yeah, but then it's ifs. Now it's a definite, and they need the definite. They need future bodies more than they need a playoff round with no revenue.
Let Mike talk before you.
This is the age-old argument between Eck and I. It's like he finds value in a team that has little or no chance of doing anything other than sneaking into the playoffs and maybe winning a round. He finds
that's how these guys are. That's how they feel, Mike. You're totally out of touch with this. These GMs and they want a shot to win it. They want to go to the playoffs. They do not think for a second that they'd rather have the 6th pick.
If you ask Mark Bergman, if you ask Mark Bergman what's more constructive in terms of him winning the Stanley Cup 3 years down the road, he will tell you having the 5th pick in the draft is more constructive than losing to the Philadelphia Flyers in the 2nd round of the 2014 playoff.
Here, I'm going to give you an example. Here's a good example. If you go back to the 03 draft,
you don't feel it.
Go back to the.
I'm sorry, but let me just finish the thought, and then definitely give you an example. Okay. He won't say it. He won't think it. He won't feel it. What they will say, and they've said this. I've talked to these guys over and over again. I've asked them this question so many times. I've never gotten one person who's agreed or said with what you're saying. Not one person, not one jam at one team. They always will say the same thing. We'd rather get our young players experience playing in these big games than the 6th pick versus 9th pick because you're potentially bettering. You're potentially bettering 10 players. You're giving 10 players a chance to play in big games. And versus one guy who may or may not work out for you. I mean, that's insanity. And plus you're a hockey team. You're there to try to win it. You have a chance to win the cup. And some guys there might be retiring after this year. Like who knows? Maybe this is Shea Weber's last chance.
They will say those things for public consumption.
No, it's not public. They're competitive people. They're really competitive people. They want to play. They want to play.
Yeah, but he didn't set up the season to be competitive. Right. He knew what was happening, and he set it up to be successful in the playoffs because he wants to trade. Hold on. He wants to trade up in the draft, and he wants to get as high as he can because it's a great draft. And if you let that slip, all that's going to happen in a couple of years is we're going to remember the time he played in the COVID Cup and they didn't advance during the first round. That's what we'll remember.
Otherwise, they would
be example.
Otherwise, they would have. It
doesn't even matter now.
Otherwise, they would have kept Kovalchuk. They would have traded some of their draft picks for rentals to try to improve their chances. They were out of the playoffs.
They were, and you're right. They would have kept those guys if they knew they were going to do this. They would have kept those guys. 100% agree. But that still doesn't mean they're going to turn down a chance to go to the Stanley Cup playoffs. No one's going to do that ever. I mean, unless you're saying, if you were to say the only situation I would see that in is they say, okay, maybe they have a 50% chance at Lafreniere or 70% chance at a generational player. Okay, if it definitely comes down to it, if they have 100% chance they're going to get Lafreniere or you get to go to the playoffs, then okay, I'm going to take.
Okay, but this draft doesn't stop at 2 players. Like
I know, there's not. I mean, there's. I mean, but it does stop before. If they can move up to 6. It
doesn't stop before where they were thinking about picking. It does not.
6 versus 9 is going to be that big of a difference for them.
Say that again.
If they get in 6, say they get in 6 versus 9. Like
yes, 6 versus 9.
Move up to 6 versus 10. That's going to be a big enough difference to not take a shot at the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
To take all those players who are playing one year of all those players' careers.
Because they have no shot, Act. They really have no shot.
They don't have no shot. I know the odds. I understand they're underdogs. But they have.
We're just going to keep regurgitating this argument. It's never going to change, right?
Well,
I just cannot believe that you guys.
I do have some breaking news after this, but go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, you've been around. You've talked to people, right? Who play.
It doesn't matter, Eck. I'm telling you, this. You're going with.
That might be better for them, Russ. But
sorry.
You can argue what you're saying, and I'll give you this. Russ. You can sit there and say, oh, yeah, it's better for them to have the 6th pick than go to this. You can say that. But if you think any of them feel that way, no.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. Jeff Molson, he's going to look at this and say he knows he doesn't have a great chance of winning the cup. And usually the trade-off is if I'm not going to get as high as I can in the draft, I'm going to pull in playoff revenue and I'm going to line my pockets a little bit. He's going to do neither. So that's the part that he is not going to get to take part in. I get it when it's a regular season and you say, all right, the playoffs, yes, you get playoff revenue, and they haven't had playoff revenue in a little while. So you know what? That would be helpful. But you know what? They're not getting playoff revenue.
Well, apparently
what about what Scotty just said? All the players on that team. You don't think those players? You think one player on the Montreal Canadiens
that is insignificant to planning the future. It is insignificant.
Apparently, the premier of Quebec has been watching our show because he is holding a press conference. Francois Legault, I think is how it's pronounced. He mentions that if the Canadiens win the Stanley Cup this summer, it will be impossible to have a parade in Montreal. Let me tell you something, Francois. Don't even bother planning it because your team sucks.
That's a good one.
I mean, all he has to do is talk to the parade guys in Toronto.
That's that is such a Montreal thing to say there. That's incredible.
It is. All right. So there's breaking news.
That tells you exactly. That proves my point exactly. They're sitting there. They're thinking they could actually win this thing.
He's just talking like a fan.
Clueless.
No. But don't think there aren't Canadian fans out there, or I don't know, Blackhawks fans out there for that matter. Just don't think for a second that they don't think that this is possible, or Rangers fans that think that it's possible. And you rather be in the playoffs than not in the playoffs. That's the problem.
I think the Rangers would say
Rangers are in a completely different position now.
It is, yes.
Totally different. First of all, they opted not to trade their assets. They kept Kreider, they kept Strome, they kept D'Angelo, they kept all the UFAs, and they kept Fast. So a whole different perspective than Montreal, and different perspective in terms of where they are as a team. And now also, one thing that's to be talked about that we haven't really gotten into a lot is all the teams that had all the injured players, i.e. Columbus, start getting all of these guys back to the playoffs. So you have everybody starting at level setting in terms of guys being healthy.
I know they opted to trade their assets. You're right. But the assets they got were the draft picks that are going to be where they're going to be where they're going to be. They didn't get it. We're not talking about anything they traded here that's going to give them a first round overall pick. Those picks are theirs. They did that. They did that.
They are a playoff team. They changed the order that they're in. Change if they're a playoff team.
But when we had Corinne on Monday, she basically said that the part of the motivation of trading for those draft picks that they got for Kovalchuk and other players was to trade for players at the draft because they can't get anybody to sign in Montreal because they,
well, they're not going to get that anyhow. So.
They might if they have the draft in September, but
maybe
probably they'll get a chance to do that. I think, and they will.
I don't think
that is why they did that. They definitely want. They want to get. They don't have the patience. Montreal doesn't have the patience to do this complete build down. I agree with that. She's right when she says that. That's not a city that's going to accept being in like Pittsburgh or Toronto did, where they just put AHL teams on the ice for 3 years and saw what happened.
Well, I do have
they're not going to be okay with that.
Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks because I'm not sure what they're doing anymore. They yesterday basically cleaned house of prospect goalies. Like they had one from last year's draft. That's a high school kid. I don't know anything about it, but that's a long-term goalie solution.
Oh, that too. I don't agree with you.
They also had a guy, Wouter Peters, who I get he was a long shot. I had seen him play, 6'4", a guy from Belgium. They decided probably they didn't like the year they saw out of him, so they're not going to sign him to a contract. Okay. Alexis Gravel didn't have the greatest year for Halifax, but he's 20 years old. They've decided they're not going to sign him either. And basically, they extended an AHL goalie, what's his name? Tim something. I can't even find it now.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter, but they extended him for 2 years at $1.4 million. So they're essentially, if you look at their goaltending situation, not only are they not set up for a goalie for the future, they're not really set up for goaltenders past this year.
They aren't. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean,
I don't know what the plan is there other than to save money.
Is it possible that they told Leonard that they're going to sign him again?
I guess anything.
That's the first thing that came to my head. Like it feels like they maybe already know something in the back of their head. They're like, okay, we're trading you away, but we're going to bring you back.
Well, they do
even looking for the future. Like they don't have any long-term prospects for goaltending. The guy in the AHL is 25 years old.
Well, they like Colin Delia.
Okay, I mean,
I'm just telling you.
I don't think he's the future number one.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Leonard was trying to parlay a one-year deal into a bigger contract, right? So you would have to hope that Chicago is taking a look at him and potentially looking. Look, that's why we talked a little about. We were surprised that we went to Vegas as opposed to Carolina.
Yeah.
So I think we all thought Carolina seemed to be the more likely landing spot for him.
Well, hey, Russ, maybe they're going to be the team that takes Askarov.
Yeah, but you don't know that yet, right?
No,
you don't know where you're going to finish. You don't. I mean, it's
right. That's a if because you don't know how it's going to fall.
I just emailed Kevin Allen an invite because I need him to come on here and help me with this one.
Yeah, Jen.
No, Heck, he's not going to
fight your own battles.
Heck,
I need somebody else. I need somebody else. This has to be. I don't get it.
He's not going to pile drive me 2 shows in a row. So don't
count on that. He probably.
I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know if he's even available. I just texted him. I'm like, I need.
That's like saying Ricky Steamboat's not going to give me another sidewalk slam, but he probably would. But the idea is, looking at the Blackhawks.
Yep.
You still have to look beyond whatever free agents you're going to sign. And even if, like Mike said, Colin Delia is their future number 2, they don't have a future number 1, and they don't have a number 1. Who's the long-term goalie there now? I mean, Crawford's done after this year.
They probably re-sign Crawford.
No, they've got to be thinking, well, there are goalies out there. There are going to be UFAs and stuff like that. There's going to be goalies.
Who are they going to get? Seriously.
I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm thinking.
Unless they have a deal with Leonard, who, again, is going to look for 3 years and probably more money than they can afford. Wait.
So, Russ, define more money than they can afford.
Well, Leonard's going to want 3 years at least $6 million.
Okay, I don't foresee that being more money than they can afford.
Right, which is what they're paying. What they're paying Crawford right now.
Yeah. Right, except the cap is going to be flat.
Yeah, but right now the perception is that Brent Seabrook will never come off LTIR. Now, that may not be the case because then I heard something about Seabrook may be ready to play next year. I'm sure they don't want him to come back because he's done, but maybe he does come back. You know, there are contracts on that team right now that I think they either want to dump or that they may be alleviated from because of injury. Seabrook is one of them.
And Leonard is 28. Big difference.
Yeah, he's still in his prime.
Yeah.
He's still in his prime, right? He's shown he can be a number 1. He's fortunately seems to surmounted the mental illness and the other issues that he had. Clearly, you never know because we know mental illness is day by day. You never know what's going to happen. But there's a guy who showed his worth in Chicago, and should be the guy that you would think they would want to lock up for several years. Especially as you said, Russ, there's nobody else in the pipeline.
But nobody has locked him up, and maybe nobody is going to lock him up.
Well, we know why the Islanders didn't, right? And that's nothing to do with Leonard. More to do they wanted to bring Sorokin over, and they viewed Varlamov as the entree to getting Sorokin to come over.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, even looking at their cap situation for next year, it's not great, and they still have to make decisions on Kubelik, who they're gonna have to sign as an RFA. They're gonna sign Kajula, they'll probably have to re-sign as well. And Dylan Strom's going to get decent money.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, even if they let Slater Cuckoo go, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to want to pay a goalie that much. I don't know.
This is a team that is in the past. You know, they did have a history of not like spending a ton for goalies before Crawford. If you remember, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they won a Stanley Cup with Niemi, who was really, many people think one of the lesser goalies to ever win a Stanley Cup. It's possible. I mean, he played well enough for them to win it. But they might just be I don't know. They could be looking a different way. It's really hard to say. But I think that when you think, I'm looking at the free agent list right now. I'm looking at the UFAs.
I mean, even looking at with the LTIR and everything else, they only have $175,000 this year cap space. That's it.
Right.
I mean, the problem is look at the moves they made, right? You brought on Olimata at $4 million per. You're paying Connor Murphy $3.85 million per.
Yep.
I mean, that's $7 million in salary that you likely potentially could have done with that. And I like Mata, but that to me,
he's not the same anymore. You're right.
All right, ready for here are your NHL UFA goalies that are available this summer. There's a lot. Okay. There's a lot. Obviously, Crawford's the most expensive.
Okay. This just tweeted out by Chris Johnston.
Okay.
The NHL return to play format currently under discussion allows for some jockeying among the top 4 teams in each conference. And in the East, to be Boston, Tampa, Washington, Philly. In the West, St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, Dallas. It would see them play each other 3 games in conference, with the outcomes helping determine seeding. So in this new scenario, they're still doing this absolutely stupid
This means there's a reason they're doing this.
Because they'd be sitting dormant. That's
Right.
Well, they're doing this because they're sitting. The options are this, and this is I heard this option. Then I also told you the other option, which I thought they were leaning towards, which is where they would each play, where each team would play each other. That would be 5 games, right? Here's the thing: if you take those 2 teams out, so now you're left with 4 teams, which each will play how many games? 3 games. So the top 2 teams will play 3 games. So the idea here is getting 3 games to get to the playoffs versus 5. They're shortening it up. They're shortening it up because they're afraid of they're going to shorten things up.
If you're Bruce Cassidy, or if you're John Cooper and you're Tampa and Boston, are you playing Bergeron, Marchand, Stamkos, Kucherov in these 3 games, risking them getting hurt before the actual playoff start?
No, I might sit them. I'm probably sitting them.
Here's the event. Here's the thing that's kind of interesting. Okay, we'll throw this out there for a second. Your first round matchup is significantly different if you get that first seed, because let's just say, for example, that Montreal pulls off an upset, or who would be not Montreal. I'm sorry, Montreal pulls off an upset, or in the other, say, Carolina pulls off.
They don't reseed, so that's the thing. From what they're talking about right now, like. And that's why this would be an exercise in futility. They're talking about not reseeding the top 4 seeds. Like they have, under the plan that Elliot Friedman talked about yesterday. It would be Boston playing the winner of Toronto and Columbus. That won't change if they have this. These are simply playing games to play games, to have action, to be able to get back in the flow of things. And if that's the case, why bother?
Yeah, then it is really stupid. I mean, I agree with you 100%.
If I'm Cooper, I'll play the guys I need to play for the. Right. Your tent is folding up. I was so hurried today. I'm trying to get the thing up. If I'm Cooper, I'll play guys that I need to play for the first period and a half, and then sit everybody, because at this point, I know my team can go very far. He probably doesn't care who he plays in the playoffs and what the seeding is, rather than, like Mike said, why would I be risking injury at this point?
Let's just say this, Jan. I think that if Boston and Tampa Bay are playing in a best of 3 that has no consequence, then 1 or 2 of those games, it's going to be the Providence Bruins against the Syracuse.
Absolutely. There's no reason not to. I would try to keep my guys fresh, play them part of a game, and then let them basically sit the rest, especially if there's no impact. And the question is should you really use these games to be impacting the seedings?
If a team has
a 10-point lead on another team, why should 3 games impact the seedings?
Because that would be 3 is playing 6 and 4 is playing 5, right?
But Eck, I'm telling you, if it's Tampa, Boston, the starting goalies will play 1 game, the backups will be playing the rest of that series, and nobody's going to care. It's going to be the most meaningless 3 games they could possibly play against each other.
I'm really surprised at that. I think that. From what I had heard, I talked to a player who was on this committee, and when I was putting out some of my stuff, and I talked to somebody else who knew what was going on, who was one of the guys of the team, and they went past this because of that reason. They said that would be ridiculous, and I would really be shocked if it goes back there. I can't imagine. There's no benefit. The only benefit to that, to not reseeding, the only benefit to that is that you can have these stupid bracket things, or whatever.
It's basically if they set it up with 4 hubs, then teams don't have to move around. It's basically you'd have like the NCAA tournament. You'd have the 1 and the 4 seed in one place, along with 5, 12, 8, and 9, and they don't reseed once the first round.
You don't need to do that anyway, right? I mean, you don't have to do that anyway.
Right.
You can still have the top team either play the 5th or 6th team, whoever wins.
Yeah, but there would have to be moving around based on based on those 1 through 4 and 2 through 3.
Because all 6, if they're in 4 hubs, every division's in its own hub completely. So if the division's in its own hub, then it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't get.
Well, if they're playing the conference in one place, yes, but
just the division. I mean, the division itself. I mean. Am I missing this? Isn't it still that? Are we still doing divisional playoffs where you have
No,
I don't think so.
It's conference.
It's conference.
It's one. They're setting it 1 through 12, and then they're setting up brackets where it's like the Northeast region and the Southeast region in NCAA.
Right.
So
that's East and West, right? So you're talking East and West.
Yeah.
So the 1 is the top seed in one bracket. The 2 is the top seed in the other bracket. and everybody filters through.
Yeah.
So that's why if they have 4 hubs, 2 in each conference, then it makes sense because then these teams don't have to move around. They're stuck in that bracket. But if they're talking about basing like who's the first and second and third and fourth on this competition between those teams, then they have to move around before the start of the round of 16.
It makes
Right
no
now,
sense to do it conference-wise if they're going to put them in 4 hubs. If they're going to put them in 2 hubs, fine. But if they're going to put them in 4 hubs, it makes 0 sense. Because you're right. I don't see there's no way that's happening, Mike. Because it, and
well, you tell Chris Johnston that. That's what he said.
Well, no, I mean because
Fine, I will.
I don't know.
Either way.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I mean, they're not good. They're
Logically, especially for Boston, who nobody can exceed them in terms of points.
Right.
If I'm Boston, I'm sitting there going, no, thank you very much, but I'll pass.
Right.
Yeah, just think about this, Eck. In these negotiations, do you really think Jeremy Jacobs is going to accept something like that?
No.
Let's be real.
No, I mean, I don't see it at all. I don't see.
No.
I mean,
I don't think Comcast going for it either in Philly, to be honest.
His team has the most points. He's the head of board of governors. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to have to go through him.
No,
yeah, and just think of it this way. And I know all this is going to be thrown out because we can't say, well, if the season ended, okay, if the season ended when it ended and they just went to 16 teams and who you were going to play was who you were going to play, Boston would have played Columbus. The devastated, injured Columbus without Seth Jones, without Cam Atkinson, without
They'd have rolled him.
and they would have rolled them.
without a goalie too.
Now, Toronto plays Columbus if this structure is correct, a completely healthy Columbus, and the winner of that best of 3 or best of 5 plays Boston. If I'm Boston, I'm pissed. If I'm Toronto, I'm pissed because the Columbus you were playing in March is not the Columbus you're going to play in July.
But Mike, who do you want Toronto to play that you feel comfortable with them winning against?
How about Detroit?
Well, I have an idea for you then.
He's going that way.
I know clearly he doesn't think they could win against anybody.
They're going to win just to spite him.
I have an idea for you then. Here's how we get to trade in. We play 31 teams.
No,
Please.
Stop talking.
Mike, end the call, Mike.
Just stop talking.
Not the buzz. No.
I know. I'm not going to go. I'm not doing there.
Heck, you have to admit this. It's amazing to me, and it has to be to you, that there is literally no team that the Leafs would play against right now that Mike would feel comfortable with them winning.
And the ones he would feel comfortable with them winning against, he would just be like, we don't want to win against them because everyone's going to say that we just beat a bad team because we got lucky.
Right.
Somebody in the chat basically said this would be the year the Leafs win the Stanley Cup because they can't have a parade down Yonge Street.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. It's
Tim Hortons would sponsor the virtual parade.
Yeah. That's, by the way, I was thinking about that the other day. Like something I really missed.
Tell the QEW.
Something I really missed I haven't had for a long time are donuts. Like donuts are something.
Really? Dunkin' Donuts.
I wouldn't buy donuts in this situation.
Oh, come on.
Dick, are you kidding me? I've had donuts 4 times at least.
Have you?
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts. They're
Really?
all wearing gloves and masks. It's really, you go through the drive-through. What are you talking about? What's your worry?
I don't know. I only get food like I get. I mean, I'm this. Do you want to hear my?
You only get food like you get bears? Is that what you were going to say?
I've only ordered out twice in this entire time. So
What?
That's it.
Oh my God.
Wow.
No, because I'm just.
I've ordered out twice in the last 2 days.
My mom's here. I'm just afraid. I just don't want to. She's older. I'm just not going to risk anything. Like I've just been.
The guys
I mean, the only
upstairs.
thing I've ever and this is my process. The two times I ordered out were both driving through Chick-fil-A. Okay.
Right.
And which I think is doing a killer business. Like Chick-fil-A,
Obviously not on Sunday.
packed,
Right.
not on Sundays, but packed rest of the time. And it was my son's birthday. His favorite food, Chick-fil-A. We drove through Chick-fil-A.
Right.
I have the mask on. I have the thing and the gloves in the drive-through. I'm taking the food with the gloves, dumping them into another bin immediately, throwing out all the bins that they give us at the place.
Oh my God, you're overdoing it.
I probably am.
You are, but here's the thing: you
Scary
could
part when you put the hand sanitizer on the bins. That was the bad one.
right. You could
Or spray down the chicken with Purell. Yeah,
you could order takeout, Eck, and they
I
will
love
leave
the taste of rubbing alcohol and
No, no, but Eck, you could order the takeout, and they'll leave it on the steps of your.
Yeah, but that's still there's a lot that happens between.
Oh my God!
All right, Matt, I think we think we've jumped the shark here. I think we need to.
Again, I want to thank Scotty Niedermayer for coming on today. That was fantastic.
Yeah, he was terrific.
He was terrific, as was to be expected. You guys didn't remember. Mike, you didn't know that he was the captain of that team, did you?
If I would have been asked the trivia question, I probably would have guessed him.
I thought that was pretty interesting when I was doing
it. Was good. I forgot. I had forgotten.
The other thing about that is that we had mentioned before you guys were here, and that's worth saying on here, is that Scott Niedermayer and Corey Perry are the only two players who have won every thing they've ever competed in. Like
World Junior,
yeah, right,
Memorial Cup, World Championship, Stanley Cup, Olympics.
Calder Cup.
1991 Upper Deck card has him holding
Niedermayer didn't play in the AHL. Corey Perry
Niedermayer didn't play in the AHL, but Niedermayer won Rookie of the Year in the NHL.
Right.
So like it's great. So like he's won every. Imagine that. Like some players have a chance to win anywhere. He's won everywhere. Like World Cup of Hockey, like you said, Olympics, World Championships, World Juniors, the Memorial Cup, the Stanley Cup. It's just like that's nuts. I mean, that's just nuts.
Well, at least Rob won once.
Yeah, Rob won one.
So he can't hold it over his brother's head. That's good.
Yeah. All right, folks. Despite what my partners think here,
don't worry, Eck. There's still Friday. It feels like
today. You
Friday.
want to win the Stanley Cup, and remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. I'll have